My article was called Rhetoric, Materiality, and the Disruption of the Meeting, the Stadium as a Place of Protest. On September 16th of 2018, hundreds of citizens of the Dallas-Fort Worth area marched outside the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, in protest. These protests were in honor of Botham Jean and O'Shea Terry, who were two black males killed by officers within 5 days of each other. And at the protest, the family's attorney, Lee Merritt, stated that the protest had four demands. One, Officer Amber Geiger be fired, and she is the officer who had shot and killed Botham Jean. Two, the charge against Geiger be murder instead of manslaughter. Three, the Dallas Police Department identified the officers responsible for leaking information about Jean's death to the media, and those officers be punished. And the last one was the media who put out the information about what was found in Jean's home on the day of his funeral formally apologized to the family. The protesters also marched in support of the national anthem protests that had been going on. These protests were initiated by Colin Kaepernick regarding police brutality against black men and the racial injustices that were going on nationwide. The whole purpose of this article was an argument presented by Anthony Cavaiani, the author, on how the Botham and Jean protest outside the AT&T Stadium function as a place as protest and place as rhetoric to amplify the demonstrators' social justice messages. Stadiums are significant places of meaning making. The primary way a protest is made meaningful is through the place at which it is held. And place and protest is broken down into three categories: material rhetoric, embodied rhetoric, and inferential rhetoric. Material rhetoric is understood through the study of symbols that exist within material structures. Protest events encompass this fluidity because the material discursive because they are held in places with symbolic meaning or are meant to alter or change the dominant meaning of this place. Protests have rhetorical features because it prompts people to express themselves in certain ways, so that when it's held in front of a physical structure, those structures communicate through symbols to prompt people to communicate rhetorically. Embodied rhetoric provides critics with an awareness as to how bodies are constantly rooted or located in place. There's a symbiotic relationship that exists between bodies and places, which is important to the rhetorical meaning that is created as a result of a protest. Signs, symbols, and changes in movement of bodies in a place facilitates, invents, and legitimizes meaning. For an example, the night of the Botham O'Shea protest, 90,000 fans attended the giant Cowboys game that night, and the protest capitalized on that fandom to amplify a message to an audience that may have not received that if they weren't attending the game. The symbiotic relationship existed that night between the protesters and the fans. Ephemeral rhetoric are unique to protest. Speeches and events at protests are not always archived or recorded. That means they're short-lived. Rhetoric of place and protest also function as ephemeral because places are ephemeral. Places may seem permanent because of their physical structures, but they are fluid because they are constantly reiterated, reinforced, or reinterpreted. Example, the AT&T Stadium's fluidity is being used for different things like football games, concert, political conventions, stuff like that, which emphasizes different meanings based on what's going on in the stadium. Place as rhetoric is broken down into two different things: pre-existing meaning of the place and temporary reconstruction of the place. Places that have previously hosted protests in the past are better suited to aid in the associating of the meanings of social movements. Although the AT&T Stadium doesn't frequently host protests, the understanding of the stadium within the larger context of Dallas, the state of Texas, and the Dallas Cowboys as a team provides important contextual information about the prior meaning to the AT&T Stadium. Dallas does have a rich and complicated history of race relations, and the Cowboys are known as America's team and the world's most valuable sports franchise. Protesters at the protest attempted to temporarily reconstruct AT&T Stadium. Merritt, who was a family attorney, said that they were symbolically bringing them, Gene and Terry, to the game to disrupt the meaning of the occasion. Although they didn't disrupt the game, all the protesters carried two empty caskets over their head to symbolically bring Gene and Terry to the game. Also, many of them wore black colored funeral attire. The protesters reconstructed the space of the stadium into a site of memorialization of Gene and Terry. So it was concluded that protests at sports games are no longer unexpected, and stadiums are a powerful rhetorical springboard for protests not related to sports. And these are my references.